Every day, over 2.25 billion cups of coffee are consumed, and it's estimated 3 times increased demand by 2050. In this journey, we'll explore coffee, loved by millions around the globe. Welcome to the world filled with rich aromas, bold flavors, and exciting warmth of coffee. History of coffee. Ethiopia is widely considered to be the epicenter of where coffee came from. If you ever googled coffee history, you will have come across the famous story of how coffee was founded in Ethiopia by Chaldi, an Ethiopian goat herder, around 800 AD. He wandered over to his goats to see them acting very strangely. They were energized and excited after eating some of the berries from a tree. After trying the berries himself and also feeling excitable and alert, Chaldi took their berries to the monk. The monk exclaimed that it was the work of the devil and threw the berries into the fire. In doing so, a beautiful heavenly aroma was released and the berries were quickly wrecked as the fire and they crushed into the embers. Realizing their mistake, the berries were then placed into a jug and covered with hot water for preservation. The monk then went on to drink it only to realize it helped them stay awake during nightly devotions and prayers. Of course, this is probably just a wonderful legend, and the history of coffee is more likely to lie with the Aroma Gala people from nomadic tribe. There are also a few well-known stories about Yemen's contribution into the founding of coffee. The most famous legend from Yemen about coffee region has a side twist to the Ethiopian story. A Yemeni Sufi mystic was traveling through Ethiopia on spiritual matters. He encountered some very energetic and enthusiastic birds that had been eating the food of a plant, which is now known as a coffee plant. Exhausted from his journey, he decided to try these berries for himself. He found that they produced an energetic state in him as well. However, it's largely believed that coffee beans were originally exported from Ethiopia to Yemen. Later, Yemeni traders brought coffee plants back to their homeland and began to grow them there. As it's thought that coffee originated in Ethiopia, it's also believed it made its way north across the Red Sea into Yemen in the 15th century. It then started to be grown here in the Yemeni district of Arabia, and by 16th century it was known in Persia, Egypt, Syria and Turkey. It was immensely popular for its qualities and helped improve alertness and awakeness, allowing people to devote more time to spiritual matters and praying. The world's first coffee house was opened in Constantinople in 1455, now known as Istanbul. Coffee was drank at home as part of the daily routine, as well as shown hospitality to guests. Outside of the home, people visited coffee house to not only drink coffee but to engage in conversation, listen to music, watch performance, play chess, gossip and watch up on the news. Without the modern technology we have today, coffee houses quickly became the epicenter for exchanging and gaining information. They were also referred to as House of the Wise, and thousands of pilgrims visiting Mecca each year for all over the world. Knowledge of this wine of Arabia, which it quickly became referred to, began to be spread. Then the course of coffee history began to change. This exotic beverage certainly caused a stir for European travelers who were filled with intrigue and fascination. So by the 17th century, coffee had made its way to Europe and became increasingly popular across the continent. European coffee history begins in Italy, where it was imported from the Ottoman Empire. In the particular, Mediterranean merchants contributed to the widespread popularity of coffee in European regions, and in 1645 the first ever European coffee house was opened in Venice. Drinking coffee became a very great commodity, especially for wealthy people. Through the Dutch East Company and British East India Company, coffee also became very popular in England. The first coffee house in England opened in Oxford in 1651, and many others quickly popped up, particularly in London. Coffee houses were strictly for men only, where they were called discuss business and news, and as well called socialize. It is said that many business ventures and ideas started in London coffee houses. Coffee was then introduced to Paris, France in 1669 by Suleiman Aga, the ambassador to the court of King Louis XIV of France. He was armed with bags of coffee described as a magical beverage. Only 2 years later, in 1671, an Armenian who went by the name Pascal opened a coffee drinking booth at the fair of Saint Germain. Visitors very quickly learned to look for the Petit Nour, a name that still endures. This marked the beginning of Persian coffee house, which of course inspired the coffee houses to open across France. Over the next 30 years, coffee became a cultural staple in Austria, Germany, Spain, and the rest of Europe. However, growing coffee in Europe was a struggle due to its naturally colder climate. European traders would later start to grow coffee elsewhere. The founder of colony of Virginia, Captain John Smith, introduced coffee to other settlers of the Jamestown in 1607. However, it wasn't well received at first. The tea was much more preferred. In 1670, Dorothy Jones became the first person to receive a license to sell coffee in Boston. By the mid-1700s, many taverns were also dubbed as coffee houses, but tea was still the drink of the choice. It was only when a rebellion against Great Britain caused all the tea to be thrown into the sea, it was considered unpatriotic to drink it any longer. Coffee then became increasingly popular. The New World hot tropical weathers was seen as a new ideal for the cultivation of coffee, and coffee plantation quickly spread throughout Central America, and their first coffee harvest occurring in 1726. Latin American countries also have ideal coffee growing conditions, such as a good balance of sunshine and rain, high and humid temperatures, and rich soil. By the mid-18th century, Latin American countries evolved into being some of the top coffee producers, able to clear big tropical forests ready for plantations, and today Brazil is the world's biggest producer. Economics and supply chain. There's a good chance your day started with a cappuccino or a cold brew, and you aren't alone. In fact, coffee is one of the most consumed drinks on the planet, and it's also one of the most traded commodities. At least 20 to 25 million families around the world make a living from growing coffee. With the assumed average family size of 5 people, more than 100 million people are dependent on coffee growing. A total of 10.3 million tons of green coffee were harvested worldwide in 2018. The coffee market size is estimated at US dollars of $126.17 billion in 2023 and is expected to reach $158.89 billion by 2028, growing at a compound annual growth rate of 4.72% during the forecast period of 2023 to 2028. Today, Brazil is the world's leader in production of green coffee, followed by Vietnam, Colombia, Indonesia, Honduras, and Ethiopia. Coffee beans from different countries or regions can usually be distinguished by difference in flavor, aroma, body acidity, and grit texture. These taste characteristics are dependent not only on coffee growing region but also on genetic subspecies variants and processing. Coffee production is a big industry for one reason. Coffee consumption is truly a universal affair with 2.3 million cups of coffee consumed globally every minute. By total volume sales, coffee is the 4th most consumed beverage in the world. That makes the retail side of market a major factor, dominated by companies like Nestle and Jacob Dewey Egbert. Global retail coffee sales in 2017 reached $83 billion, with an average yearly expenditure of $11 per capita globally. Of course, some countries are bigger coffee drinkers than others. The biggest larger consumer by tonnage are the US and Brazil, despite also being the largest producer and exporter. But per capita consumption is significantly higher in European countries like Norway and Switzerland. What does the coffee supply chain look like? First, it starts with coffee from plant to factory. There are 2 types of tropical plants that produce coffee, both preferring high altitudes and with production primarily based in South America, Asia, and Africa. Coffea arabica is more pollutant bean with a more complex flavor and less caffeine. It's used in most specialty and high quality drink in Arabica coffee. Coffea Conpira. Meanwhile, the stringier and more bitter flavor, it's also easier to grow and is most frequently used in espresso and instant blends as Robusta coffee. However, both types of beans undergo the same journey of 10 process. First, growing. Plants take anywhere from 4 to 7 years to produce their first harvest and grow fruit for around 25 years. Second, picking. The fruit of the coffea plant is the coffee berry containing 2 beans within. Ripened berries are harvested either by hand or machine. Third, processing. Coffee berries are then processed either in a traditional dry method using the sun or wet method using water and machinery. This removes the outer fruit, encasing the salt after green beans. Fourth, milling. The green coffee beans are hulled, cleaned, sorted, and optionally graded. From factory to transport. Once the coffee berry is stripped down to green beans, it's shipped from producing countries through a global supply network. Green coffee beans are exported and shipped around the world. In 2018 alone, 7.2 million tons of green coffee beans were exported, valued at $19.2 billion. Arriving primarily in US and Europe, the beans are now prepared for consumption. Fifth, roasting. Green beans are industrially roasted, becoming darker, oilier, and tasty. Different temperature and heat duration impact the final color and flavor, with some preferring light roast to dark roast. Sixth, packing. Any imperfect or somehow ruined beans are discarded and remaining roast beans are packed together by type. Seventh, shipping. Roasted beans are shipped both domestically and internationally. Bulk shipping go to the retailers, coffee shops, and in some cases direct to consumer. Straight to your cup. Roasted coffee beans are almost ready for consumption, and by the stage the remaining steps can happen anywhere. For example, many factories don't ship roasted bean until they grind it themselves. Meanwhile, coffee will grind their own coffee on site before preparing drink. The rapid growth of coffee chain made Starbucks the second highest earner in US fast food venue. Regardless of where it happened, the final step, bring coffee straight to your cup. 8. Grinding. Roasted beans are ground up in order to better extract their flavors either by machine or by hand. The preferred fineness depends on the darkness of the roast and the brewing method. 9. Brewing. Water is added to the coffee ground in a variety of methods. Some involve water being passed or pressed through the grounds like espresso, drip, while others mix the water and grounds like French press and Turkish coffee. 10th. Drinking. Liquid coffee is ready to be enjoyed. One average cup takes 70 roasted beans to make. The world choice of caffeine pick-me-up is made possible by the structured and complex supply chain. Coffee isn't just a drink, after all, it's a business. 25 ways coffee is enjoyed around the world. Understanding the different types of coffee goes far beyond which brand you buy or how dark the bean was roasted. As this essential beverage has spread around the world, countless ways of making and serving it has been developed. From the traditional to the modern, here are ways coffee is prepared and enjoyed in different countries. Buna, Ethiopia. The historic origin of coffee itself go back to Ethiopia, where the coffee preparation and consumption is still an important social ritual. In the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, Buna, Amharic for coffee, is processed according to the procedure that takes 2 or 3 hours. It's traditionally performed in the home up to 3 times per day, and for important occasion to welcome guests, beans are roasted and ground by hand before being blended with water and poured from the spouted vessel in a long stream. Ethiopian coffee is usually drank black, sometimes with sugar, and may be flavored with spices or with salt, honey, or butter. Espresso, Italy. In Italy, espresso is the most popular coffee, often referred to simply as cafe, and served during the day and after meals. Unlike milk coffee drinks, which are consumed only at breakfast, for a higher price, you can enjoy your espresso at a table with a pastry, but Italians often drink theirs in a few sips while standing at the bar. All coffee is made from Arabica or Robusta beans, but it's processing that makes espresso taste different. Compared with most coffee, espresso is roasted longer, ground more finely, and steeped longer. Longer roasting time releases more of the coffee natural oils, giving espresso a richer flavor and creating a layer of foam on top known as crema. The longer steeping time is due to the extra fine grounds which slow down the passage of water. Melange. Austria. The coffee house of Vienna served dozens of drinks that combined coffee with dairy, chocolate, liquor, and other ingredients, but the most typical choice is the Milan, made from coffee, milk, and milk foam. Italy cappuccino is similar but uses only espresso and milk foam, while Italians consider cappuccino and other milk coffee drinks to be morning beverages. Austrians enjoy milling at any time of the day. French Café Venus and English Venice Cafe do not refer to the milling but to espresso topped with whipped cream. In Austria, this is called Fränzchen because the pale brown color resembles the Fränzchen monk robe, similar to how the cappuccino was named for the robes of Capuchin monks. Coffeehouse Scandinavia. In the northern parts of Finland, Sweden, and Norway, cheese is placed at the bottom of the mug, traditionally one carved out of birchwood. Hot coffee is poured over the cheese and drinks can choose to spoon out the pottery melted coffee soaked cheese as they enjoy their drink, or save it until the end. The specific cheese used for the delicacy is lightly sweet and has a firm, dense texture similar to the Greek halloumi. Its Finnish name, Joutilauppa, means bread cheese, not only from the cheese appearance and texture but from its being used like wheat bread, especially in Arctic where wheat was hard to come by. It can also be toasted and spread with jam. Café Touba, Senegal. Senegalese Café Touba gets its earthly, peppery flavors from the African spice called diar and sometimes other spices like clove and cardamom. These are roasted and ground in a ratio about 1 part spices to 4 part coffee. Named from the only city of Touba and originally consumed by scholars, Café Touba has become popular throughout Senegal and is even purported to have health benefits. At local snack stands called Tangonas, street vendors prepare the coffee from start to finish, pouring it back and forth between containers to generate it and selling it to small cups. Nitro Cold Brew, USA. Iced coffee is typically brewed hot, but soaking coffee grounds in cold water for a longer period of time, 12 to 24 hours, produces cold brew, a milder, less acidic beverage with a flavor that doesn't change as much over the time. When the cold brew is infused with the nitrogen gas, the tiny bubbles give it a velvety texture and a foamy head, similar to beers like Guinness. Nitro Cold Brew was invented in 2013 and originally sold by Stompton Coffee Roasters, but after Starbucks started offering it around 2016, it swiftly became one of the chain's most popular drinks. Its processing makes it expensive, but you can make Nitro Cold Brew at home relatively easily using a whipped cream dispenser with cartridges of nitrogen. Cafezinho, Brazil. In Brazil, the cafezinho reigns supreme as the preferred way to enjoy the beverage. Synonymous with hospitality, cafezinho literally means a little coffee and is similar to standard coffee preparation in other Latin American countries such as Cuba and Colombia. Finely ground coffee is added directly to the pot of boiling water, in which unrefined cane sugar known as panela or rapadura has been dissolved. Once the coffee brews, it is filtered through paper or more traditional cloth and served. Cafezinho is brewed strong and commonly served black, but some people add a bit of cream or milk. Café de Olla, Mexico. But what makes Mexico coffee most distinctive is how it's brewed. In a traditional earthenware pot known as an olla, like many other cafes, Café de Olla is brewed with warm roasted spices such as cinnamon and cloves, and sometimes with chocolate, as unrefined sugar called piloncillo is used to sweeten the coffee. Brown sugar and molasses can be used as a substitute. Some trace the origin of Café de Olla to the big earthenware crock of coffee brewed for soldiers during the Mexican Revolution. It may also be flavored with orange peel and even combined with alcohol. Turkavisi. In Turkey, both tea and coffee are popular beverages, but while the tea is enjoyed all day, coffee is served in the afternoon or following a large meal. The drink is brewed individually in the special kettle called a chiziv. Turkish coffee relies in extra finely powdered coffee beans, which result in the different flavor than espresso. Another key difference is that the Turkish coffee is made by boiling ground in the specialized boiler over a heated sand, whereas espresso is made by forcing heated water through the grounds. Turkey coffee is unfiltered, so the ground must be allowed to be settled before the thick coffee can be be drunk, and there is custom of reading the fortune of drinkers in the ground on the bottom of the cup. It may be enhanced with spices of sugar and is typically served alongside water and or sweet treat. Filter coffee. India. While North Indian prefer tea, South Indians have traditionally favored coffee. South India's shade-grown coffee beans are dark roasted and often mixed with chicory root. The concentrated beverage made from them may be mixed with milk, cream, and sugar, and it is known as a filter coffee because of the unique double complement brewed used to make it. India is one of the world's largest producer of coffee today, but the majority of it still produced in the country's south. Filter coffee remains a regional specialty in India until the 1950s, when the chain called India Coffee House introduced it to the rest of the country. Coffee Sueda, Vietnam. Today, Vietnam is one of the world's largest exporter of coffee, but coffee was first introduced in the 19th century during French colonial rule, when French coffee drinkers lacking access to fresh dairy started using tinned condensed milk in their café au lait. The result was the sweet, refreshing drink that English-speaking call Vietnamese coffee. Café soda is Vietnamese, which literally means iced coffee with milk. It's traditionally brewed with a single serving press called a pine, which drips the coffee into condensed milk at the bottom of the glass, after which the mixture is stirred and poured over ice. Both fresh and condensed milk are used in a variation called Baksoi. Kopi Josh, Indonesia. To make Kopi Josh, a piece of burning wood charcoal is plunged into iced coffee. Kopi means coffee, but Josh is said to come with the hissing of charcoal as it sputters into the liquid. In addition to a smoky flavor, some proponents of Kopi Josh claim that the charcoal adds health benefits to the drink, like neutralizing the coffee acidity to make it easier on the stomach. Kopi Josh is a specialty of the city of Yogyakarta in Indonesia, coffee-producing island of Java, invented in the 1960s by a street vendor known as Mr. Man. Xuanzong, Hong Kong. Xuanzong is a Cantonese name for the colorful bird known in English as a Mediterranean duck. This drink may have gotten its name from the duck's association with marriage and fidelity, because Xuanzong is a harmonious marriage of two beverages, coffee and tea, a blend of Eastern and Western culture elements that merged in the 20th century during British colonial rule of Hong Kong. Xuanzong can be found in the tea houses throughout Hong Kong today. A Hong Kong cafe called Lon Fong Jon claimed to have invented the drink in 1952, using 3 parts coffee to 7 parts milk tea, but the exact ratio varies. Café La Grima, Argentina. Lower quality cheap coffee imported from neighboring Brazil was once the main coffee available in Argentina, including coffee made using the truncato process, in which inferior beans are roasted with burnt sugar to disguise their flavor. Beverages like the Café La Grima originated as a way of balancing and concealing the bitter flavor of low-quality coffee. La Grima is Spanish for tear, and Argentina Café La Grima consists of single dark teardrop of espresso added unmixed to the glass of warm milk. Considering the breakfast beverages, Café La Grima is generally made with plain, unfiltered milk in a ratio of 9 parts milk to 1 part coffee. Mesa Grande, Portugal. Sour, bitter, and sweet flavors come together in the Portugalish Vega, an iced mixture of coffee and espresso, water, and lemon juice. It may be slightly sweetened and spiked with rum. Moussegrain takes its name from the Algerian town and is said to have been invented by a French soldier in Algeria in the 1830s and 40s. Unable to mix coffee with milk or brandy due to rationing, the soldier began drinking the coffee with water and later brought this custom back to Paris. Even as Moussegrain popularity faded in Paris, it spread to other parts of Europe, and different countries added their own spin, including Portugal's coffee lemonade. Flat white, Australia and New Zealand. Both Australia and New Zealand claim to have invented the flat white, which consists of steamed milk poured over espresso or ristretto, which is similar to espresso but brewed for less time and with less water, resulting in milder flavor. Larger than a tiny cordato and less foamy than the cappuccino. Compared with the latte, a flat white is creamier and less bitter because of the stream milk. And Ristretto, recently a variation called Magic Coffee has popped up in Melbourne, named for its supposedly containing the perfect magical ratio of coffee to milk. Magic Coffee is served in the 5-ounce cup rather than the 6-ounce typically used for a flat white. Irish coffee, Ireland. Irish coffee begins with a mixture of Irish whiskey, coffee and sugar. Sugar syrup is recommended over other forms of sugar because it dissolves faster and allows more room for other ingredients. Double cream is carefully poured on top of foam to a distinct layer and the coffee whiskey mixture is sipped through the cream. It's called Highland coffee, which made with Scotch whiskey and or a Kentucky coffee when made with bourbon. There are so many foods with misleading geographical names that you might be surprising to learn that Irish coffee really was invented in Ireland in 1943. The cocktail attracted international attention in the early 1950s when the Buena Vista Hotel in San Francisco became the first establishment to sell Irish coffee in Greece. The milkshake, like Frappuccino common in the US at chains like Starbucks, is made by blending coffee, milk, ice and flavored syrups. But don't confuse this beverage with a similarly named frappe, which is more popular as a summertime beverage in Europe, especially in Greece where it originated. Unlike the Frappuccino, the frappe may or may not include milk and usually has an additional flavoring. The base is a foamy mix of sugar and instant coffee, which whips the froth similar to Dalgona coffee, in which variation this foam is blended with the ice. But the original frappe was made by pouring a coffee foam over ice cubes. Frappe is said to have been invented in the trade show in Thessaloniki, Greece in 1957 by Nescafe salesman who added instant coffee and ice of this shaker meant for the children chocolate drink. Oolong, Thailand. In Cochin Chinese, oolong means black and iced, which is how the Thai coffee with Chinese origin is typically enjoyed. Oolong deep smoky almost burnt flavor came from the other ingredients roasted and ground with the coffee beans. These may include sesame seeds, soya beans, corn and ice, as well as spices like cardamom. Often sold as a powder, oolong may be with sugar into the coffee syrup that can be easily combined with water or milk. The ice to make drink. Thai iced coffee may also be prepared using thang dom, a distinctive filter with an elongated cloth bag nicknamed the coffee sock. Java, Arab countries. Kava is traditionally made using a tripered coffee pot called dilla, which can vary in design depending on which country it comes from. Different countries also favor different roasting levels, with southeastern Arab countries producing the lightest, such as Yemen's white coffee. Kava may be roasted and ground with spices, but spices are also added to dlava as a coffee brews, especially cardamom. As Arab merchants helped spread coffee to the world in the 15th and 16th century, an elaborate custom of serving coffee to guests developed similar to practices in Turkey and Ethiopia. The dlava is used to pour the dark ice-infused coffee into small cups without handles called finjals. Café Bombón, Spain. Popularized in Valencia, Spain, the coffee preparation may have been influenced by similar drinks in Southern Asia. Aside from Vietnamese coffee, Singaporean and Malaysian kopi sui panas and Thai coffee ron are made in much the same way but using ground coffee instead of espresso. Like Vietnamese coffee, condensed milk is an essential ingredient in Spain's Café Bombón, which is made from equal parts of condensed milk and espresso. Café Bombón is mixed before using drunk, but it's served unmixed in the small and clear glass so that its contrasting layer create a striking visual effect. Dark espresso on top of the white condensed milk, sometimes with the third pale brown layer at very top from the espresso natural creamer. Café au lait, France. Though originally France, Café au lait is popular throughout Europe, with different countries having their own variation. In the Netherlands, it's always served with the cookie and made with equal part coffee and milk, earning the local name for it wrong coffee because it contains more milk than Dutch-style coffee drinks. The combination of drip coffee with heated milk sets the Café au lait apart from similar drinks like the Café latte, made with espresso and milk, or the Italian cappuccino and Australian finer melan made with milk foam. Depending on the equipment heating the milk may create a macro foam that provides a velvety texture. Heating also increases the solubility of the milk sugar, making it slightly sweeter. Freezer, Germany. Hailing from Fresa is in northern Germany, the Fresa is a hot cocktail made with coffee, rum, and sugar topped with spoonful of whipped cream. Like an Irish coffee, the Fresa is not stirred or mixed but sipped through the layer of coffee floating on top. The drink's biblical name meaning Fraser used to the German slang for the hypocrite, and legend claims that the Fraser was invented at the party to disguise that Gust was drinking alcohol. A variation made with hot chocolate instead of coffee has an equally colorful name, Teto Tante meaning dedant. White coffee, Yemen. Around the world there are several types of coffee known as white, such as Malaysian Ipoh white coffee, made with beans that have been roasted in margarine. In Yemen, white coffee refers to another distinctive roasting process, whereas coffee beans are usually roasted at the temperature between 450 degrees Fahrenheit to 480 degrees Fahrenheit. White coffee beans are roasted at 325 degrees Fahrenheit for about half the time. The result is a pale beige bean that is too hard to grind with typical at-home coffee grinders. So it's often sold pre-ground and may also be mixed with local spice blend called Hawaii. Compared with darker roast, white coffee has a milder, less bitter flavor, more of a certain nutrient, and according to some, more caffeine. These are some of the most popular coffee drinks around the world. Which one is your favorite? Let me know in the comment section. Health effects of coffee. Coffee lovers around the world who reach for their favorite morning brew probably aren't thinking about its health benefits or risks, and yet this beverage has been subject to a long history of debate. In 1991, coffee was included in the list of possible carcinogens by the World Health Organization. By 2016, it was exonerated as research found that the beverage was not associated with an increased risk of cancer. On the contrary, there was a decreased risk of a certain cancer among those who drink coffee regularly once smoking history was probably accounted for. Additional accumulating research suggests that when consumed in moderation, coffee can be considered a healthy beverage. Why then in 2018 did one US state pass legislation that coffee must bear a cancer warning label? A moderate amount of coffee is generally defined as 3 to 5 cups a day, or an average of 400 milligrams of caffeine, according to the dietary guidelines for Americans. Coffee and health. Coffee is an intricate mixture of more than 1,000 chemicals. The cup of coffee you order from a coffee shop is likely different from a coffee you brew at home. What defines a cup is a type of coffee bean used, how it is roasted, the amount of grind, and how it is brewed. Human response to coffee or caffeine can also vary substantially across individuals. Low to moderate doses of caffeine, 50 to 300 milligrams, may cause increased alertness, energy, and ability to concentrate, while higher doses may have negative effects such as anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, and increased heart rate. Still, the cumulative research on coffee point in the direction of the health benefits. Does the benefits stem from the caffeine or plant compounds in the coffee bean? Is there a certain amount of coffee needed a day to produce a health benefit? Cancer. Coffee may affect how cancer develops, ranging from the initiation of a cancer cell to its death. For example, coffee may stimulate the production of bile acid and speed digestion through the colon, which can lower the amount of carcinogen to which colon tissue is exposed. Various polyphenols in coffee have been shown to prevent cancer cell growth in animal studies. Coffee has also been associated with decreased estrogen levels, a hormone linked to several types of cancer. Caffeine itself may interfere with the growth and spread of cancer cells. Coffee also appears to lower inflammation, a risk factor for many cancers. The 2018 uproar in California due to the warning labels placed on coffee products stemmed from a chemical in the beverage called acrylamide, which is formed when the beans are roasted. Acrylamide is also found in some starch food that are processed with high heat, like French fries, cookies, crackers, and potato chips. It was classified in the National Toxicology Program 2014 report on carcinogen as reasonable anticipated to be a human carcinogen based on the studies in lab animals. However, there is not yet evidence of the health effect in humans from eating acrylamide in food. Regardless, in March 2018, a California judge ruled that all California coffee sellers must warn consumers about the potential cancer risk from drinking coffee because coffee selling companies failed to show that acrylamide did not pose a significant health risk. California law Proposition 65, or the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act of 1986, fueled the ruling, which requires a warning label to be placed on any ingredient from the list of 900 confirmed or suspected carcinogens. However, many cancer experts disputed the ruling, stated that the metabolism for acrylamide differs considerably in animals and humans, and the high amount of acrylamide used in animal research is not compatible to the amount present in food. They cited the beneficial health effect of coffee with improved antioxidant response and reduced inflammation, both factors important in career prevention. Evidence from the American Institute for Cancer Research concludes that drinking coffee may reduce risk for endometrial and liver cancer, and based on this systematic review of a large body of research, it is not a risk for the cancer that were studied. In June 2018, the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment (OEHHA) proposed a new regulation exempting coffee from displaying cancer warning under Proposition 65. This proposal was based on the review of more than 1,000 studies published by the World Health Organization, International Agency for Research on Cancer, that found inadequate evidence that drinking coffee caused cancer. In January 2019, OEHHA completed its review and responded to comments and submitted a regulation to the Office of Administrative Law (OHL) for final review. Type 2 diabetes. Although ingestion of caffeine can increase blood sugar in the short term, long-term studies have shown that habitual coffee drinkers have a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to non-drinkers. The polyphenols and minerals such as magnesium in coffee may improve the effectiveness of insulin and glucose metabolism in the body. In a meta-analysis of 45,335 people with type 2 diabetes followed for up to 20 years, an association was found with increased cup of coffee and a low risk of developing diabetes. Compared with no coffee, the decreased risk ranged from 8% with 1 cup a day to 33% for 6 cups a day. Caffeinated coffee showed a slightly greater benefit than decaffeinated coffee. Another meta-analysis of a prospective cohort study showed similar association when compared the highest intake of coffee up to 10 cups a day with a lower of 1 or lower cup. There was a 30% decreased risk of type 2 diabetes in these drinking the highest amounts of coffee and caffeine, and the 20% decreased risk when drinking decaffeinated coffee. Further analysis showed that the incidence of diabetes decreased by 12% for every 2 extra cup of coffee a day and 14% for every 200 milligrams a day increase in caffeine intake up to 700 milligrams a day. Heart health. Caffeine is a stimulant affecting the central nervous system that can cause different reaction in people. In sensitive individual, it can irritate the stomach, increase anxiety or a jittery feeling, and disturb sleep. Although many people appreciate the temporary energy boost after drinking an extra cup of coffee, high amount of coffee can cause an unwanted heart proliferation in some unfiltered coffee, such as French press and Turkish coffees. Contains deterpents, substance that can raise bad LDL cholesterol and triglycerides. Espresso coffee contains moderate amount of deterpents. Filtered coffee, drip brewed coffee, and instant coffee contain amount of no dependencies, as the filtering and processing of these coffee type removes the deterpents. Despite these factors, evidence suggests that drinking coffee regularly may lower the risk of heart disease and stroke. Among 83,076 women in the nurses' health study, drinking 4 or more cups of coffee each day was associated with 20% lower risk of stroke compared with non-drinkers. Decaffeinated coffee also showed an association with 2 or more cups daily and 11% lower stroke risk. The author found no such association with other caffeinated drinks such as tea and soda. These coffee-specific results suggest that components in coffee other than caffeine may be protective. A large cohort of 37,514 women concluded that moderate coffee drinking of 2 to 3 cups a day was associated with 21% reduced risk of heart disease. In addition, a meta-analysis of 21 prospective studies of a man and a woman looking at coffee consumption and death with chronic disease found a link between moderate coffee consumption, 3 cups per day, and a 21% lower risk of cardiovascular disease death compared with non-drinkers. Another meta-analysis of 36 studies including men and women reviewed coffee consumption and a risk of cardiovascular disease including heart disease, stroke, heart failure, and death from these conditions. It found that when compared with the lowest intake of coffee, average of 0 cups, a moderate coffee intake of 3 to 5 cups a day was linked with a 15% lower risk of cardiovascular disease. Heavier coffee intake of 6 or more cups daily was neither associated with higher or lower risk of cardiovascular disease. Depression. Naturally occurring phenol is found caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee can act as antioxidant to reduce damaging oxidative stress and inflammation of cells. It may have neurological benefit in some people and act as an antidepressant. Caffeine may affect mental states such as increased alertness and attention, reduce anxiety, and improving mood. A moderate caffeine intake of less than 6 cups of coffee per day has been associated with a lower risk of depression and suicide. However, in a few cases of sensitive individuals, higher amount of coffee may increase anxiety, restlessness, and insomnia. Suddenly stopping coffee intake can cause headache, fatigue, anxiety, and low mood for a few days and may persist for up to a week. A prospective coherent study involving 263,923 participants from the National Institute of Health and American Association of Retired Persons found that those who drank 4 or more cups of coffee a day were almost 10% less likely to become depressed than those who drink none. In a meta-analysis of observational studies including 360,677 participants, the author found a 24% reduced risk of depression when compared to higher 4.5 cup a day at lower than less than a 1 cup intake of coffee. They found an 8% decreased risk of depression with each additional cup of coffee consumed. There are also a 28% reduced risk of depression comparing the highest to lowest intake of coffee, with the greatest benefit occurring with caffeine intakes between 68 and 509 milligrams a day, about 6 ounces to 2 cups of coffee. A review looking at 3 large prospective cohort of men and women in US found a decreasing risk of suicide with increasing coffee consumption. When compared with a no coffee drinker, the pooled risk of suicide was 45% lower among those who drank 2 to 3 cups daily and 53% lower among those who drank 4 or more cups daily. There are no association between decaffeinated coffee and suicide risk, suggesting that caffeine was the key factor rather than the plant compound in coffee. Neurodegenerative disease. Parkinson's disease (PD) is mainly caused by a low dopamine level. There is a consistent evidence from epidemiologic study that higher consumption of caffeine is associated with lower risk of developing PD. The caffeine is coffee that has been found in animal and cell studies to protect cells in the brain that produce dopamine. A systematic review of 26 studies including coherent and cause control studies found a 25% lower risk of developing PD with the higher intake of caffeinated coffee. It also found a 24% decreased risk with every 300 milligram increase in coffee intake. A Finnish coherent study tracked coffee consumption and PD development in 6,710 men and women over 22 years. In that time, after adjusting for known risk of PD, those who drank at least 10 cups of coffee a day had a significantly lower risk of developing the disease than non-drinkers. A large cohort of men and women were followed for 10 and 16 years years, respectively, to study the caffeine and coffee intake on PD. The results showed an assumption in men drinking the most caffeine, 6 or more cups of coffee daily, and 58% low risk of PD compared with men drinking no caffeine. Women showed the lowest risk when drinking moderate intake of 1 to 3 cups coffee daily. Alzheimer's disease in the CAIDE cardiovascular risk factor, aging and dementia study drinking 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day at a midlife mean age 50 years was associated with significantly decreased risk of Alzheimer's disease. Later in life compared with low coffee drinkers after 21 years of follow-up. However, 3 systematic reviews were inconclusive about coffee effect on Alzheimer's disease due to a limited number of studies and a high variation in study types that produced mixed findings. Overall, the results suggested a trend towards a protective effect of caffeine against late-life dementia and Alzheimer's disease, but no definitive statements would be made. The author stated that the need for large studies with longer follow-up periods, randomized controlled trials studying a protective effect of coffee or caffeine on a progressive of Alzheimer's disease and dementia are not yet available. Gallstones are various proposed action of caffeine and components in coffee that may prevent a formation of gallstone. The most common type of gallstone is made of cholesterol. Coffee may prevent cholesterol from forming with cholesterol in the gallbladder. It may stimulate constriction in the gallbladder and increase a flow of bile so that cholesterol does not collect. A study of 46,008 men tracked the development of gallstones and their coffee consumption for 10 years. After adjusting for other factors known to cause gallstones, the study concluded that men who consistently drank coffee were significantly less likely to develop gallstones compared to men who did not. A similar large study found the same result in women. Mortality. In a large cohort of more than 200,000 participants followed for up to 30 years, association was found between drinking moderate amount of coffee and low risk of early death. Compared with non-drinkers, those who drank 3 to 5 cups of coffee daily were 15% less likely to die early from all causes, including cardiovascular diseases, suicide, and Parkinson's disease. Both caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee provided benefits. The author suggested that bioactive compounds in coffee may be responsible for interfering with disease development by reducing inflammation and insulin resistance. In a large prospective cohort of more than 500,000 people followed for 10 years, an association was found between drinking higher amounts of coffee and a low rates of death from all causes. Compared with non-drinkers, these drinking 6 to 7 cups daily had a 60% lower risk of early death. Protective association was also found in those who drank 8 or more cups daily. The protective effect was present regardless of genetic predisposition to either faster or slower caffeine metabolism. Instead, and decaffeinated coffee showed a similar health benefit. Conclusion. A large body of evidence suggests that consumption of caffeinated coffee does not increase the risk of cardiovascular disease and cancers. In fact, consumption of 3 to 5 standard 8-ounce cup of coffee daily has been consistently associated with reduced risk of several chronic diseases. However, some individuals may not tolerate higher amounts of caffeine due to symptoms of jitteriness, anxiety, and insomnia. Specifically, those who have difficulty controlling their blood pressure may want to moderate their coffee intake. Pregnant women are also advised to aim for less than 200 milligrams of coffee daily, an amount of 2 cups of coffee, because caffeine passes through a placenta into a fetus and has been associated with pregnancy loss and low birth weight. Because of the potential negative side effects some people experience when drinking caffeinated coffee, it is not necessary to start drinking if you have not already or increase the amount you currently drink, as there are many other dietary strategies to improve your health. Decaffeinated coffee is a good option if one is sensitive to caffeine, and according to the research summarized, it offers similar health benefits as caffeinated coffee. It's also important to keep in mind how you enjoy your brew. The extra calories, sugar, and saturated fat in a coffee house beverage loaded with whipped cream and flavor syrup might offset any health benefits found in basic black coffee. Extinction. Coffee production is currently under a serious threat that could drastically change the coffee we drink each day and potentially leave our cups dry. Coffee trees cover an estimated 11 million hectares of land throughout the tropics. Farmers harvest ripe Armlon coffee cherries by hand and meticulously process them until the seed is ready to be roasted. Outside of some large farms in Brazil and elsewhere, farmers who steward the world coffee lands do nearly all their work by hand. From planting to picking, these farmers get a razor-thin margin and often sell coffee for less than their production price. Yet, the challenge of production coffee doesn't stop there. Of the 124 known species of coffee, 99% of coffee produced and consumed today comes from just two species, Arabica and Robusta. The genetic diversity of coffee is remarkably low for a crop of such importance. The diversity of genes within a plant population increases the possibility of adaptation to changing climate and disease pressure. Coffee limited genetic diversity leaves the crop especially susceptible to climate change and disease. Climate. Coffee grows in a narrow strip of a Tropic of Cancer to a Tropic of Capricorn, often referred to as a coffee belt or a bean belt. Within the geographical climate zone, coffee trees thrive within a specific microclimates consisting of ideal altitude, rainfall, moderate temperatures, and adequate shade. Coffee trees are uniquely sensitive to climate and quickly decline in condition outside their optimal range. Because of their sensitivity, coffee trees will be heavily impacted by changing climate. Within the next 25 years, the suitable climate is predicted to be reduced by half. As coffee have become more intensively produced over the decades, shade has been removed and heavy use of synthetic fertilizer and pesticides have become the norm. This has degraded the formerly rich ecological capacity of these systems and further exacerbated climate-driven changes. While slowing a changing climate is a gargantuan problem to tackle, restoring microclimates for better plant health is not only possible, it can be achieved relatively quickly. A stable microclimate for coffee, including diverse shade trees and functional living soil, can help buffer the effects of changing climate. Disease. In addition to climate change, there are several diseases that regularly pose threat to coffee production. The most pressing currently is coffee leaf rust, CLR, a pathogenic fungus that infects coffee leaves, especially shutting down the plant's ability to photosynthesize, produce nutrients, and sustain food. Left unchecked, leaf rust can decimate entire farms. In 2012, rust spread to Latin America and reached a pandemic proportion, causing an estimated of $1 billion in crop loss and damage to trees. With livelihood and entire economics at stake, governments and organizations rapidly deployed fungicides and removed infected trees, saving many farms and abating the spread. This event provided a major impetus for the further development of rust-resistant coffee varieties. By 2017, Honduras had aggressively adopted rust-resistant variants. One such variety, Lempira, counted for 42% of all coffee trees in the country. Despite these efforts, a rust outbreak hit the country and several infected the Lempira variety. Some efforts are underway to breed coffee to enhance its disease resistance. Yet breeding coffee is a painfully slow process. Breeding starts by crossing genetically distinct parents. The offspring of such are called F1 hybrid. These hybrids are known for their vigor yet lack stability in their traits. Breeding a stable coffee variety can take upward to 15 years. Meanwhile, there are currently 40 known strains of rust and likely many more on the way as fungi have a knock for mutation. While breeding may be part of the long-term solution for coffee in face of a challenging climate, there are some immediate and affordable actions that can improve coffee resilience. Low-hanging fruit. Coffee trees are native to the forests of Ethiopia, where they have grown and evolved amongst a diverse of shade trees. As global coffee production has become more industrialized, farm has removed shade trees, increased the diversity of coffee trees, and introduced a slew of chemical fertilizer, fungicides, and herbicides to maintain production. In short, coffee industry has destabilized the two pillars of successful coffee production: a diversity of shade trees and healthy soil. Coffee agroforestry system blend the diversity and structure of the forest with the production production of coffee. This essentially mimics the natural habitat of coffee trees but can be intentionally designed to include other fruits, nuts, honeybees, and even high-value hardwood trees. Thus, agroforestry systems have potential to provide additional revenue streams, resilient microclimate that buffer larger climate events, and the innate disease and pest control of complex ecology. Healthy soil has a regenerative effect that compounds over time to create more life within a system. This works on a scale of weeks, months, and years. Even the perfect hybrid tree is only as healthy as vibrant as the soil in which it grows. Breeding can and should be part of the solution, yet it is in no way a silver bullet. Betting the future of coffee on the success of hybrid creates a risk, especially if it is further consolidates power rather than responding to farm realities. For coffee to continue as we know it, farmers-led agroforestry system built on a foundation of soil and plant health must become the norm. This can reverse a trend of farmland degradation, improve coffee quality, provide farmers with much needed additional revenue streams, lessen and even eradicate disease pressure, and contribute to climate change mitigation on the local and global scale. This movement is already underway, yet it will require increased awareness of meaningful change globally. More coffee roasters, consumers need to understand this issue and know that their coffee purchase make a difference, and more of the voices working within this movement on the ground need to be heard so we can change the discourse in the coffee industry echo chambers. Your future cup of coffee depends on it. Thank you for watching. My name is Hamza Mateen and this is my first YouTube video. If you want to watch more of my content, please like and subscribe, and feel free to share topics for next video in comment section. See you until next time. Bye bye.